A Giants podcast for Giants fans
By Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash
and Paul Dottino. Down the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason through the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
All right, let's get it cooking on one giant step. Shaun Morash here with you. Of course, thank you for listening to the first one with training camp open, the first episode of training camp, and I guess the unofficial start to the 2023 New York Giants campaign. No guest today, just me blabbering on as usual. Thank you for listening. And remember, you can download and subscribe everywhere podcasts are available. If you're a first-time listener, welcome aboard. Hit that download, subscribe button right there. You get little alerts either on that Audacy app or everywhere podcasts are available every time we tape one of these. So I thought this was a good time to make sure that we kind of had our collective thoughts out, pumped out everything that's gone on with camp, because it has been a really unique / wild storyline filled first 2 to 3 days of training camp as we're doing this on Thursday night, probably hearing this by Friday morning and over your weekend. A lot of podcasts you might have listened to, including us over on Evan and Tiki and WFAN Afternoons, where you can catch me now, touched on Saquon Barkley not missing a single day of camp. So that is where we will begin this podcast right now that we have literally all the info, and Saquon spoke on Thursday. He ends up not missing a single day of camp, not even report day. He shows up on report day, and then, of course, has already been practicing, has already been showing Eric Gray the ropes. He ends up getting basically a one-year deal worth $11 million. It was the 10.1 on the initial franchise tag. Now, he agrees to this incentive-laden deal. The reason this won't affect the cap, as I'm sure some of you have heard, if not, is because everything that it's tied to, the 1,300 yards, the 65 receptions, the team needs to make the playoffs. All of those things did not happen. Well, they made the playoffs, but as a collective unit for all of those things to align, they've not happened in Saquon Barkley's career. And clearly, it would be hard to do so since last year was the first year that the Giants made the playoffs in Saquon's career. So Saquon ends up agreeing to this, but I guess the big deal is he gets $2 million up front. Look, I'm not counting another man's money. Who knows why that was important to him? Maybe you got a little something to spend on. Maybe you're buying a house. Who knows why Saquon needed the $2 million up front, but it got him to show up to camp on time. And before I really ponder why, I just want to clap it up for Saquon, because I personally, as a Giant fan, have loved Saquon Barkley, the player, have loved Saquon Barkley, the person, but have always maintained my hatred for Saquon Barkley, the draft pick at second overall. And the Giants finally have something cooking here for the first time in his Giants tenure, making the playoffs last year. This Dable Shane era seems to be moving. It's not an era that drafted him, but to get him back in the fold as this team continues to evolve and not be a distraction in this camp, which we all thought, and we all thought he would have had the right to, whether you agreed or not that the Giants should have paid him a long-term deal. I would not have given him a long-term deal. He still is the player in the business. I would have had every right to sit out camp and try to do what's best for him. I mean, you can see both sides of that, and he ends up coming back. Now, thank you, Saquon. Thank you for being here as a Giant fan and putting that beside us, and now we don't have to have Giant players being asked questions about Saquon all through camp. That's important. I do wonder, though, and look, the Giants may have ultimately never gave in on this, and by the way, probably shouldn't have, but the idea that Saquon didn't hold out a little longer and push harder to have an agreement in place that the Giants would not place the franchise tag on him for a second time, which legally in the CBA they have the right to do, and I don't understand why they wouldn't do that. Maybe there's some kind of handshake agreement, but if it's a handshake agreement, it's not a real agreement unless it's in writing. That is the one thing. Saquon comes back, gets the $2 million up front, gets this incentive part of this. And look, you're betting on yourself. And if he hits those incentives, Giants will be a playoff team, clearly, because that's part of the incentives and we'd all sign for it. But ultimately, Saquon could have dug his heels in. I mean, the idea that he leaves himself open to being tagged again next year. Now, next year he could play further hardball and be that distraction. But, Giants can say, so be it. We own your rights. And he didn't hold out for that. That feels crazy to me. And I do wonder what was said on that Zoom call led by Austin Eckler, guys like Josh Jacobs on it, all the running backs. Saquon felt like the best of the bunch, with all due respect to Jacobs or even a Tony Pollard, that if he dug his heels in hard here and even if he didn't ultimately miss opening day, missed all of camp and sent some sort of message, he got off that Zoom call and basically within 36 hours got this deal done with the Giants. It really goes to show you, deep down, whatever advice that these running backs are getting from their agents where they still think they're worth what they used to be worth is probably bad advice. And I think Saquon, maybe even after collectively talking to him, probably walked away and said, geez, we're screwed as running backs. I need to make sure I do what's best for me. Now, Saquon ends up meeting the media on Thursday after 2 straight days of practice and claims he had an epiphany, whatever the word is. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, clearly. And basically felt like, yeah, he was disappointed in how things went down with the Giants, but what was best for him was to make sure he got in camp and wasn't a distraction. Was that out of the goodness of his heart? Maybe. I mean, he still got something out of it. He got the money up front. He gets the incentives, and that's better than nothing because he really had no leverage. But maybe Saquon really is the ultimate good guy. Maybe this is his only way of saving face in a PR spin. And who knows? Maybe John Mara got involved. And although they legally can't agree to a long-term deal, maybe there already is a framework now in place because they were that close. They can get one done the moment the season ends. Of course, as long as Saquon stays healthy. So, look, Giants have him. They have him in the fold, and that's a good thing. But you have to wonder, not that Saquon wouldn't be happy for all his teammates, because all of his teammates would be happy for him. What has to go through Saquon's mind the day after he agrees with this? And we pivot to Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas, who we all thought was going to get the bag next year. He has emerged as potentially, outside of Trent Williams, the best left tackle in football. He is undoubtedly the best draft pick the Giants have had, period, in the last decade. Certainly, obviously, with that, the best first-round pick, really, since Jason Pierre-Paul. And that includes Odell Beckham Jr., who I still love. I wish never left the Giants. I've always been pro-Odell while other Giant fans weren't. Odell was an electrifying, unbelievable talent. But Andrew Thomas plays a position that's not as sexy. But think about how far we've come as a Giant organization where it was an unplayable situation with Eric Flowers, with Nate Solder. Before that, as Will Beatty disintegrated before our eyes. The Giant left tackle position has been a dumpster fire for the better part of a decade, really since the last Super Bowl, before the Giants drafted Andrew Thomas, and Andrew Thomas has completely solidified it. He was taken in a tackle-heavy draft as the first one, with the likes of Tristan Wirfs and Jedrick Wills, and we've seen what's happened with Mekhi Becton and the Jets. He's the first one to get an extension. It's a 5-year deal, $117.5 million, $67 million guaranteed. And now, but this for a kicker and a caveat, because of agreeing to it now, he's signed through his age 30 season, which is incredible. So he'll be able to recoup. As a tackle, you still probably could play beyond 30. You would hope. He'll be in line for a second payday, and he creates for this year. Out of nowhere, the Giants get another between $4 and $5 million in cap space, leaving them with operating room of about $9 million right now. Now, does that mean a lot? Well, there's not many great free agents out there for the Giants to go attack and go after right now. But what it does do is it leaves them that operating room in season. Should they need to make a trade at the deadline? Hello, Davante Adams. Should they decide, like they tried to do this year with Julian Love and Saquon Barkley, or should I say last year, to come up with another extension? Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson. They now have even more financial flexibility. It's just been an absolute masterclass by Joe Schoen. And to kick it back to Saquon, I'm sure Saquon couldn't have been happy that the moment he finally agrees, plays, good sport, comes back into camp, they go and they sign the first round pick. What was it? 2 years after him, Andrew Thomas, this monster 5-year, $117.5 million deal. Now, with all due respect to Saquon, Andrew Thomas, as I said, better player for his position, clearly more important player to the team. And of course, left tackle is just that much more a valued position. But think about what Joe Schoen walked into that mess last year of a salary cap spot. Hires the right head coach, who now has taken 4 Dave Gettleman picks in Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, and now Saquon Barkley as well. Gets him in the fold for either, obviously, the franchise tag in Saquon's case with a little more, or 3 extensions, and the right coach has gotten the most out of those guys. The Giants are completely set up for long-term success with Joe Schoen, and it's been almost crazy to see this general manager operate like this at such a competent level. And now his training camp begins. We've had 2 days worth of practices. I've yet to get out to camp. My plan is to be out there next week. Then I'll probably be out there the week after that. I know we're going to do a show from there on WFAN. We have WFAN Day over there. Darren Waller. We are in a New York area, and if you're listening from outside the tri-state, thank you as always for listening to One Giant Step. We are in a New York area that's consumed with Aaron Rodgers, and I understand it. It feels exactly like the 2008 season felt if you were a Giant fan, where you came off the Super Bowl. Now, of course, winning one playoff game is not coming off the Super Bowl last year with the Giants, but Brett Favre in Jet Camp, and that was all. I mean, and nobody was talking about the Giants, and the Giants went on to have a great regular season that was ultimately derailed by the Plaxico situation and the loss in the second round. But Darren Waller, if this was any other town without Aaron Rodgers on the other team right now, would be turning heads and be an enormous national story. He looks like a gazelle health-wise from all accounts. He has been apparently uncoverable. Maybe not good news for the Giants defense. And Daniel Jones is just flat out dealing. I believe it was Art Stapleton, might even been Patty Traina, who had said on Twitter that Daniel Jones looks like he's driving and throwing the ball harder than they've ever seen him throw it. And Darren Waller looks like a matchup nightmare. The Giants wide receiver room, I'm sure, will work itself out. They brought in Cole Beasley, by the way, who is running a lot with the ones already, but Darren Waller seems to be the guy that's turning heads. I believe it was Connor Hughes that had the report that they pulled Darren Waller out for a breather, but it basically was a thought, hey, we got to just make sure Jones is throwing other guys at this point, because Daniel Jones hasn't had a receiver like this his entire career. He hasn't had a guy like this. He's a tight end, but he's their number one receiver. And it's easy for Daniel Jones already to completely fall in love with him. But finally, you get the feel through these practices that the Giants are going to look a whole lot different on offense if Darren Waller's healthy. And that's been a big bugaboo of his the last 2 years. It's why he was available for a third-round pick. But he looks very healthy. He looks strong. He looks the opposite of what Kenny Golladay was looking like a year ago, where we all said, oh, no. So those videos clipped out, remember last year? Didn't look like he was running hard at all. And he just looks slow, and you go, well, okay, maybe he's dogging it. And that's not the feel you get for Darren Waller. With Darren Waller, you get like he's a dog, and the Giants have needed dogs. And if he's cooking and it opens up the pass game, it's only going to make Saquon Barkley better. Maybe Saquon understands that as far as all the incentives he's leaned into. So right off the bat, Saquon shocked he's in camp. Andrew Thomas shocked they gave him the extension so soon. Opens up the cap space. Darren Waller looks completely healthy. And look, you could say it's training camp. You don't want to over-exaggerate the positive. It's only 2 days. It's guys running around in gym shorts. You're absolutely right. But we know what we've had a lot of in recent years with the Giants in these same scenarios in training camp. You've still had negatives come out. And right now, the Giants don't have negatives coming out. So even if the positives might be, hey, pump the brakes, Shaun, let's calm down, let's get to the games, let's make sure we get through camp healthy, that is all completely true and completely viable. But there is simply no denying that just like Kenny Golladay was a story last year, the Giants have completely ringed out all the negatives. Now, as far as what I already think is another reason why this coaching staff is so brilliant. Led by Brian Daboll, the head coach of the year. Wink Martindale on defense. Obviously, Mike Kafka on offense. The Giants are not a finished product. And we understood that's part of the reason they were a surprise playoff team last year. They made significant additions. Bobby Okereke, inside linebacker. Darren Waller, as we mentioned a little while ago. Got deeper at receiver even if they didn't add a complete alpha. But with that, they have serious camp battles with not true stars. The second safety spot next to Xavier McKinney right now. Dane Belton, who we had on One Giant Step a couple weeks ago. And, of course, Jason Pinnock, the other safety, who we got from the Jets last year. He's done a good job in camp. Those two guys on each day one and day two of camp have each taken the first team rep, showing that there's not really a guy ahead of the path. Brian Daboll's really made that an open competition, as he has for the center position. John Michael Schmitz, the second-round pick out of Minnesota. He, on the second day of camp, took first-team reps, and Ben Bredesen on the first day of camp took first-team reps. And then Bredesen and Azudu at left guard are doing that as well. So the Giants have taken these positions, including Cole Beasley and Sterling Shepard. Shepard beginning on PUP right now, but you know what I mean? These guys have talked on the sideline. They're taking these positions right now and turning them into true camp battles. And I think that only brings out the best in competition. And I love the idea that, hey, You got first team reps on one day. That doesn't mean you're ahead because there's no reason to be ahead. Camp's only begun. That next guy is going to take your reps on the second day, and may the best man win. So that's the best way to handle the Giants situation where they have a lot of raw spots on that team. Cordell Flott, Darnay Holmes at the nickel corner spot. That's another one. May the best man win. And the Giants have now, 4 or 5 of these camp battles, which makes things completely interesting for a team that's on the rise, a team that has playoff aspirations, that was a playoff team last year. They're going to have true battles, and they're going to have a locker room kind of rallying behind and seeing that true competition, and that is healthy for a team. So, health still remains huge. It remains paramount. You go around the NFL and what happened on Thursday. Joe Burrow has that scare, carted off with the calf injury. Jalen Ramsey might be out till December with a meniscus surgery situation. He was a big addition with Miami. Garrett Wilson limped off at jet practice. That could be some kind of ankle sprain. The Giants right now, they had a concussion in a car accident with Nunez Roches, but other than that, stay healthy. It's not easy to do. And injuries will be part of the reason things get sorted out here with the Giants. But if they can stay healthy and keep this kind of healthy competition, this is the potential to be a really fun camp and sets up what we think here. I would think if you're listening to One Giant Step, you all have these expectations of a really fun season of Giant football. All right, that's going to wrap it here. I know it was a little quick one. I wanted to hit on a couple little things here and get really everything set. Next Friday, if you're at Giant Camp, I plan on being there. That'll be August 3rd, 4th, whatever that ends up being, August 4th. I'm going to be doing a show with Tommy Lugauer on the Evan and Tiki show. It'll just be me and Tommy from Reds outside MetLife Stadium leading into the Metallica concert. So beforehand, if you're at Giants Camp, come by, say hello. I'll check out camp there. And at some point next week, midweek, we'll figure out the right day to drop another pod. Possibly Tommy will be on the show with me. I have a couple other Giants guests lined up here, sprinkled up throughout the next couple weeks. We'll have to reconnect with Paul clearly as well. I plan on seeing Paul at camp next Friday. And we'll get set for the preseason, which we are about 2 weeks away from our first preseason game as well. Thank you to our producer, James, and thank you to all of you for listening, tweeting. You can follow me at Shaun Morash on Twitter and at Morash Radio on Instagram. I appreciate you taking one giant step with us. Thanks for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are all in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. One giant step.